Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical, like mine, or it can be something. Do anything you put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible. When he was 19 years old, he had a boating accident that left him paralyzed. But it did not paralyze his passion, his dream, or his vigor for life. They knock you down, but don't let it stop you. He is a two-time Paralympic medalist. He's now the United States Wheelchair Rugby head coach.
Everyone has that something that is just, man, hard to get over, or around, or through, or whatever it is. And you know, whether that's divorce or cancer or disability or disease. I think a lot of times when we're in this, the ugliness of a situation, or in like the deep valley of a situation, we don't see what God's going to do with this situation that we're in. And there's a lot of faith and hope and trust that needs to happen. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose.
Get your pen and paper out. Yeah, I'm taking notes.
Paralysis to purpose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and let me just stop and thank you for listening to this podcast and for sharing it with your friends and family. I don't take you for granted. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share this podcast. You know, I say this every time. I love to do this because I get to speak with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet. And today is no exception. This guy lives in Wisconsin, the great state of Wisconsin. He actually moved back to Wisconsin from Phoenix. Not sure why you would do that, but he did. So with that backdrop, let's talk about what he's done a little bit. He is a father and a husband and a two-time Paralympic medalist. He's a keynote speaker. He's now the United States Wheelchair Rugby head coach. His first season begins, I believe, in 2022. He was just awarded that. And he shares his story all over the country about resilience and how to win in difficult situations. When he was 19 years old, he had a boating accident that left him paralyzed, but it did not paralyze his passion, his dream, or his vigor for life. And we're going to talk with Joe about that today. And so without any other, if you guys can see his wall back there, you know, I was like, what in the world? You know, I look at my wall. I mean, I got CDs and stuff. So his wall's got a USA jersey. He's got like medals all over the place, rugby balls, you know. I love being able to talk to these guys. It's amazing to me. So Joe Delagrave, I would like to welcome you to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast.
David, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to have a conversation. I'm excited that we have a Wisconsin connection. You know, I'm just recruiting people back to the state. That's the perfect time of the year to do it with the snow on the ground. Yeah, don't come here in August for our one day of awesome weather that we have.
Don't do that. Anybody?
Yeah. Now I'm excited to have a conversation.
So, you know, let's go back to when you were 19 years old and you had a boating accident. I think our listeners always like to know, you know, what happened to the individual. Then we'll get into the important thing about what happened after that event. So could you just go back and share that with us?
Yeah. So to kind of set the context of what was going on at the time, I'm 19. I just finished my freshman year of college at Winona State University, which is on the Mississippi River, bordering Wisconsin and Minnesota there. And played football for the Warriors for a year at tight end and played as a true freshman and really enjoyed my time. I joke I made the best first impression ever, where a fifth-year senior, Derek Seek, knocked me completely. I probably should have broken my back or neck. It was a 7-on-7 play. I'm lined up as this 18-year-old kid. My mom just dropped me off at college. Like, I'm just as naive as possible and as cocky as possible. And we're in 7-on-7 drills. Derek waits for me to catch a 5-yard in route, decleats me. I'm on top my head. Like, I'm just like, mommy, I want to go home type of thing. But anyway, like it was, yeah, it ended up poor. It was the worst first impression ever. I went back. It was before like concussions were treated a little bit differently. I probably rung my bell pretty good. I went back to the defensive huddle instead of the offensive huddle because I'd rung my bell so bad because the offense was screaming at me to get back up, show them you're not hurt. That show them you're not hurt. In college, you're just like, yeah, you're never hurt. Now I got back up, ran back the wrong huddle, and the rest is history. But no, it was a beautiful freshman year playing football, and went back down to my hometown of Prairie du Chien, which is about 2 hours south of Winona on the Mississippi River still, and was working there and working out there for the summer. And I was on the river with my buddies, Kyle and Adam. Kyle had went to Marquette University, and so he's back from his freshman year. Adam had went to St. Cloud State. He's back from his freshman year. We're all hanging out and working during the week. And then on the weekends, you jump on the river, you do some water sports in Prairie, because that's what you do as a river rat, and kneeboard fish, that type of thing. And Kyle's grandpa had this old bass fishing boat that he had handed Kyle down that we thought was like a yacht to us, man. Like, it was the thing. It was 35 horsepower, barely ran, but it was like, keys to freedom for us. And so we're on the river that day, and Kyle's driving, Adam's kneeboarding, and I'm sitting in the boat. And beautiful July 10th, 2004 day, 75 degrees, partly cloudy, and just feeling like a 19-year-old kid that's on top of the world and invincible, and man, just life at your fingertips. And in a split second, I went from 6'6", 260 pounds to paralyzed. Kyle had hit the bottom of the river. I flew backwards in the boat where the chair had broke, flew backwards, hit my head in the front of the boat, inside the boat, and broke my neck at the C6 and 7 level, 6 and 7 vertebrae down from the base of your skull. And in that split second, went from who I was and my identity and being an athlete and a big tall man, and to being paralyzed, and so it went from the boat to the rescue boat to the ambulance to the hospital, where they're telling me all kinds of crazy stuff that I'm like, what? And they're like, we got to med flight you and get you up to the local hospital in La Crosse that's a little bit bigger, and you're gonna have surgery. And all the while I'm thinking like, oh, like I'll be back on the field soon, and that whole thing. And I had no idea that my life would be spinal cord injury or C6 and 7 or quadriplegic or incomplete or like any of that stuff. I had no idea. I just knew when I got to the hospital, I'm like, all right, something's up, something's wrong. The situation's probably a little bigger than I thought it was.
Wow. It's interesting. I was 15 years old when I had a spinal aneurysm, and I was a basketball player, and within 24 hours, my life was changed also. And so as I listened to you tell your story, I could relate to how you're believing against what you see and what you hear, and you're waiting for some change, and you're going to fight and work. And then at some point you're like, man, this is kind of serious. And I've got a challenge in front of me. Well, once you kind of start to get situated, and you start your rehabilitation after your surgery and everything, what has been, or what is the most difficult part of the life that you now live?
Yeah, I think the most difficult part, and for everyone that goes through something is that in the middle of it process. I think you've been through something, and most of us, I think, even if people that are listening that aren't in wheelchairs or have gone through paralysis or whatever, but like everyone has that something that is just, man, hard to get over, or around, or through, or whatever it is. And, whether that's divorce or cancer or disability or disease or like whatever it is, I think we all go through something like that. And I think the hardest part is that pause period. A lot of people, especially during COVID, were like, hey, we got to pivot. And I was like, all right, I'm tired of pivoting. But it's the pause period where you're in the waiting. You're playing the waiting game. You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting for you to see how life's going to be. And I remember, being in the hospital bed, and that night, I had so many questions swirling around in my head about what life's going to look like. Is it worth it? It is, can I live life in a wheelchair and be have a happy, joyful life, and what kind of degree can I get now, and what, just all kinds, like infinite amount of questions that swirl around in your head. And I think a lot of times when we're in this, the ugliness of a situation, or in like the deep valley of a situation, we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't see what God's going to do with this situation that we're in. And there's a lot of faith and hope and trust that needs to happen. And honestly, some tough conversations for me with God in that moment, going like, what are you doing here? What's going on? Like, I don't understand this. I really want to understand. I mean, at 19, like we all, I'm sure at 50, you're like, I want to know why this would ever happen to anyone. You start reading these books and why bad things happen to good people. Like that whole thing is like, and it's ugly in those moments. But I think the pause of it, and then just being real with your emotions. There's going to be some madness. There's going to be some anger. There's going to be some depression. Like those are just emotions that are going to come in, and you're going to have to deal with them. And I think that's the toughest part, is really, really dealing with those emotions in the pause.
Wow. So it's interesting. You were a little bit older than I was. And I think sometimes I was so young that I was kind of naive about life. Not that you knew everything at 19, but you probably knew a little bit more than I did. It's interesting how you talk about the reality of the psychological aspect of this new life that you live, and how you have to really overcome that. Do you find, even with all the success you've had as an athlete and as a speaker, do you still have to deal with that psychological challenge every day, or where are you with that now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep it real with you. Like, I think for the most part, it's way better in the grand scheme of things than it was 17 years ago. But I think there's days too, like, just being real, I think there's days that we all deal with our triggers that come up, right? Like, the triggers don't really go away. And so I think and I thought for the longest time it was because of the wheelchair, but I think a lot of those triggers were there a lot earlier. But those feelings of inadequacy, those feelings of insecurity, those feelings of trying to find my value in what people say about me, instead of finding my value in God, and finding my value in my wife, and finding my value in myself, and I think there's still times where I've got to go, wait a second, let's have a talk in the mirror real quick. Let's do some inventory on this and figure out what's going on. So I don't think those triggers ever go away. I think we gain tools on how to combat that, and tools on how to realize that, hey, those lies aren't winning over my heart or my mind. And I think it's an ongoing battle, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I tell people all the time, there are some days I don't feel like doing this. I don't want to don't want to get in and out of the car. Don't want to get in and out of the shower. Just don't want to do all that. Some days you just don't want to. You do it anyway, but you don't want to. I was talking with Ryan Campbell on a previous podcast, who suffered an injury from a plane crash. Yeah, and we were talking about rehab. And the joys of rehab is what we called it, and how difficult rehab was, and some of those components. I don't think many people really understand that physically everything changes. You're not sure if you can have kids. You're not sure. The whole bathroom thing changes. All of that changes. Where was that? What was your greatest struggle in those areas of life that you had to face and deal with?
Yeah, like especially right away, first year and a half, my mom was taking care of me, which is every 19-year-old kid's dream, right? Like, it's like, oh no, I'm saying no, right? Like, I mean, cathing me, like, I don't want my mom, like, are you kidding me? Like, it was just so demoralizing. And, and then like trying to figure out, like, can I have sex still? I remember my mom's very forward with, she had asked the doctors in my hospital room, like, hey, can he have sex? Because I really want grandkids and stuff. And I was like, Mom, get out of my room. Like, no. And it had but then I was like, hey, Doc, hey, I'm kicking my mom out. I'm not kicking you out. We need to talk about this whole thing,
Right.
And understanding that. And for the longest time, feeling embarrassed about catheters or feeling embarrassed about my condition. And it took me a long time to realize like, why am I feeling embarrassed about something I had no control over? Like I should, and I think a lot of times we have things in our life which bring us guilt and shame for we're having it rain down on us when there should be none there, but we're letting it win over. And it was tough right away and finding rugby was when I became independent. 100%.
Let's talk about that. About rugby. But before we do, I want to go back to your family, because you've mentioned them now a couple of times, and you've also alluded to your faith and how that has helped you deal with this. What was your support system like? Was it just your family? How did your friends, the guys in the boat, how did they deal with this? I mean, one thing that people may not understand about tragedy or these types of situations that we're discussing today, it's not just the immediate family that's impacted. There are friends and a whole group of people that are trying to process this, and then at the same time figure out now the relationship that I had with Joe is no longer there. I have to have a different relationship with him. How do I manage that? What do I do about that? What was that like for you? And who were the people that helped you get through it?
Yeah, like my family and friends and teammates and coaches from high school and college were vital in keeping me from depression and keeping me active in the hospital. I did my rehab in La Crosse. So I was the only spinal cord injury there. I never went to a big rehab hospital, which from an independent standpoint set me back. But from an emotional standpoint, it was so important. So my mom and my stepdad, who I call dad, was there. And then and my wife now, she was my girlfriend at the time. She was there every day we were dating when we were 18, and she was there every day in the hospital for 3 months. I did the smart thing and broke up with her after leaving the hospital, and which was dumb, obviously. But
what were you thinking?
It's being a man and making it up. But it's
well, let's talk about that in a minute, because I know when I went into the hospital and I was at age 15, I had a girlfriend. When I came out, I did not, but it was not by my choice.
Yeah.
She was having a tough time dealing with what had happened and what I could do and couldn't do anymore. Yeah. And it's interesting. Your girlfriend was there with you for 3 months every day in that hospital.
Every day.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
But you weren't in a place yet to know how to love her.
Yeah.
Right?
The love that she was showing me was like, I don't know if like I can reciprocate that, was kind of the thought. And then I think the other thought was like, can I get a girl like in a wheelchair? Like it was one of those things, I think, too. And then I realized, whoa, I'm like, no, this is like, yeah. So we ended up getting married at 22. We've been married 14 years.
Oh, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's a great story of evolution, because you do have a sense of, and I went through that. Like, I wonder if anyone ever loved me the way I am. I remember also we spoke with Jose Flores and on the podcast, and he always wanted to know, he considered himself damaged goods, and he doubted he could ever get married. So there's a common thread here as you talk to people and you're trying to figure out, am I worthy, is basically what we're saying. And once you get your self-worth back, you're like, look, I got Mac and skills. We can make this happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow. So you got married 14 years ago. Congratulations. I think that's
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
You talked about rugby, and for many people who have spinal cord injuries or end up using wheelchairs, athletics can become a way to get them from their paralysis to their purpose. Who introduced you to rugby, and what was it about the game of rugby that excited you?
Yeah, so Mr. Google introduced me to rugby. I had ballooned up to about 285 pounds after my accident. Ate like a football player still, without the use of my legs. That was a bad idea. And it just ate, emotionally, ate my emotional feelings. And so I'm sitting there getting really big, not being able to even push around the block in my everyday chair. And a buddy of mine, and it's one of my themes in life where you got to have people around you that care about you and love you and are willing to have tough conversations. So Kyle, he's the same guy that was driving the boat. We're still best friends this day. And so same with Adam. We're best friends this day, and they've been lifelong friends. And Kyle goes, dude, in the most loving way possible. He told me I was fat and needed to get, in shape. And I'm like, man, I'm still like 250 or something. I'm good, and he's like, no, let's get you weighed. And I'm like, fine, just get him off my back. I'm gonna go and it was to the local hospital that had no wheelchair scales. So it was like on the bed where you zero it out and lay there. And it said 283 pounds. I'm like, I told the nurse, I was like, your bed's broke. We got to go we got to do a different bed. And she's like, Joe, it's not broke, but I'll zero it out. We'll do it again. So I zeroed it out, do it again. And thing said 284. And I'm like, there's no way I gained a pound. But I was like, all right, I get the point. And then as I started looking up sports, basketball was a favorite sport of mine growing up. And I was like, oh, maybe wheelchair basketball. And I realized I didn't have the function really to play that. And then I looked up wheelchair racing, and I was like, ooh, they just push around a circle. That seems boring. Let's not do that. I didn't want to. I've never been a runner. And then clicked on this, clickbait murder ball video, and saw these crippled people smashing into each other, trying to make each other more crippled. And I was like, what in the world is this thing? And,
wait a minute. Did you just say crippled people?
Yeah, I'm a little. Sometimes I'm, not as PC as.
Look, you can say that.
No, it's. But that's what it was. And I was like, and what I saw in the video was these people were doing exactly what I was told I couldn't do anymore, or I thought I couldn't do anymore. They were being independent and playing a sport. I thought I couldn't be an athlete anymore. They were doing something that's physical and that seemed harmful and that seemed intense. And I was like, I didn't know I could do that still. And so I ended up going to a practice called the Minnesota team out of the blue. I was down in Winona still and said, hey, what, you guys got practice? Yeah, we got practice Sunday, Wednesday nights. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna come up from Winona and check it out. So I went up, checked it out. April went with me, my wife, and she, her and I got in there, and they're like, you want to get in a chair? And David, at that point, I was like, I can't even transfer the bed right now. They're like, we'll get you a chair. I brought the sliding board. I brought the baby powder to make my cheeks slide on that side, like the whole thing. I was like, it was like, if you're in the disabled community, you're like, oh my gosh, that is the most disabled. He has all the accessories. He's got them all. So I'm jumping in this chair, and I'm up and down the court. And I'm playing, I'm having a heck of a time. I have no idea what I'm doing, but my lungs are starting to fill with air, and you get, start to get a little warm, and you feel like an athlete. And about 30, 45 minutes in, I'm realizing, wow, like I can be an athlete again. I'm a really overweight, fat, like I'm not a good athlete at all. And then these guys talked about going to the bathroom, and they talked about sex, and they talked about being independent, and they talked about living on their own, and they like all these different things. And I was so intrigued. It just kept me coming back. None of them were good at rugby. And I'm not trying to be mean. They know that, but what they did for me, even in that recreational level of the sport, gave me an opportunity to fall in love with the sport, gave me an opportunity to see that I could be an everyday guy in a wheelchair, and live life to the fullest, and whatever that looked like for me. And so I think adaptive sports in their foundational level is so beautiful. The recreational aspect of them, the rehabilitational aspect of them, is super powerful, and I think unique to adaptive sports.
Yeah, it's interesting. If those guys would have been great players, they may not have given you the time of day either.
Probably not. Yeah.
You just think about that they were assigned to you to help you with your self-esteem and your sense of belonging. They actually formed a community for you on the basketball court or wherever you played the game at.
Yeah.
And so that's amazing, because we talk about three things on the podcast. We talk about the importance of perspective, perseverance, and partnerships that help get us from paralysis to purpose, and whatever that paralysis may be. And you've already touched on the importance of having the right people around you and having those people to support you, and how key partnerships are. Well, when did you were 6'6". Sounded like you were a beast of an athlete before your injury. And when did you really fall in love with the game? After you were introduced to the game and this group of guys kind of helped boost your self-esteem and let you see something that you hadn't seen before, when did you really fall in love with this game?
Yeah, I think it was about a year into my first season, and I'm like, I love this sport. And it was about 2006, 2007-ish. I realized it was a Paralympic sport and started following the Paralympic team on their road to Beijing in the 2008 Paralympic Games. And I'm like, man, I want to be good. I started making some goals to lose some weight just to play at the recreational level. And that's where it started to kind of, the competitive fire came out. And I'm like, I want to be on that team. Like I had no business setting a goal like that. But at the same time, I'm like, no, I'm going to set this goal to make the 2012 team. I remember watching the Beijing Paralympics, them winning gold. And I'm just like, they are so fast. I think I had Cheetos and Coke in my hand at the time. Still, like, I'm not an athlete yet, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be there. But that's where it was like, it started going. And for me, it was like, hey, I've got a goal. For me, when I speak, I use 4 W's: words, work, walk, win. And so that goal was my words, that goal. And I was like, I got to get to work now. And that's where a lot of people fail, is that step of work, because a lot of times when we fail during the work process, a lot of people go, oh, I'm a failure. Like they fail once and then they label themselves a failure. And usually when I wish it was just called learning, because when we see it as a learning piece or a learning opportunity, we get right back up. And that's I think what people who are successful do, is they get back up from their failure, see it, and go, you know what? Like I'm not defined by failing. I'm defined by how I react to the failure. And then part of it too is like, when you set goals and you want to do things and be significant, is you take some risk and you do some crazy stuff. April and I moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Phoenix, Arizona, specifically for rugby. I didn't know anyone there. Some guys asked me to be part of a team, saw some potential in me, and I was like, cool. All right, let's go. And I asked April, she was like, yeah, let's do it. So we just packed up our house and sold our house, moved across the country with our dog, and me and April, and the rest was history. I ended up getting mentored by some guys down there that changed my life. Scott Hawkset was one of them. He's a 3-time Paralympian, and mentored me on a lot of different areas in my life, and just a great dude. Nick Springer, who passed away last year, or this past April, was another guy that was a 2-time Paralympian, just a bulldog of a dude. Had meningitis when he was 14 and was a quad amp, where his arms were cut off just below his elbows and above his knees. And just
how he played the game.
Yeah.
My wife and I watched the Paralympics, and they did the tribute to him this year.
Yep.
And when they were showing video, I was like, I don't even know how this. And he was tough as nails. It
was phenomenal, man. And the way he was able to catch the ball without the use of his, like, he was just so athletic, and just a spirit that he had. But so those two really shaped me. I went down there. I failed a lot that first year playing high level rugby, and that really shaped me and helped me achieve my goal of the 2012 Paralympics.
Well, let's talk about goal setting and how you kept the goal in front of you in the midst of all that failing that first year. You get out there and I know you're fired up. You're like, hey, Arizona, I got my wife, I got my dog, and we're getting ready to play some rugby. And all of a sudden, you're not that good. But
I was a whipping boy that entire year. It was brutal at times, but I'm an athlete, and I always prided myself on being coachable. And I realized I am getting like real life. No one else is getting this experience in the country except like I'm playing nonstop with these guys, high level rugby. Our high pointer was Shinichi Shimakawa from Japan. So literally 3 Paralympians, and then there's this big ball of clay right here with me, like they're trying to mold me, and I'm just like, I'm eating it, I'm soaking it all up, and I'm messing up, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna work. And there's a lot of times where I'm in the gym with Scott asking him questions about, hey, how can I do this? How can I do that? And how can I do that? And really just being a student, and realizing these were all learning lessons. These weren't like, these weren't opportunities for me to just go out and win a club ball game. It was just a learning experience for me to just soak it all up, to be able to get better. And I think it really molded me as a leader. It molded me as a student of the game and being cerebral with the game. And it was, for me, that was easy. Like there was times where I'm like, guys, come on. Like, but at the same time, like at the end of the day, I'm like, I'll do this all over again. This is awesome.
So your passion and your competitive nature did not become paralyzed when you became paralyzed.
No, I didn't realize that right away. I think I was like, you know what, I guess I can't be an athlete anymore, and I guess I can't be competitive anymore. And then I realized through watching, I went back to Winona State a year after my accident. I went to school there for another year and helped out with the football team. And I remember the guys coming out of the tunnel onto the field, and the feeling that I felt in my belly, I was like, oh, that didn't go away. It was the first time I had felt it after my accident. And I was like, okay, yeah, well, I can do something with this. I really didn't know. And a couple years later, figured it out.
Wow. Well, this would be a great place for us to take a quick break, because you just talked about something very important, and that's how obstacles don't define you, but they can refine you and redirect you. So when we come back, we're going to talk to Joe more about his experience as a Paralympian, his experience as a father, and then we're going to talk to him about his faith. We'll be right back on Paralysis to Purpose right after this.
This episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, is sponsored by Fallon Upe, strategic advisor, investor, and best-selling author.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, with our great guest, Joe Delagrave. And we left off with him talking about the importance of not letting obstacles define who you are, and finding a way to keep your passion alive. Well, he did that at a very high level with the Paralympics. And I want to talk to him about his experience there. And his goal was to make the 2012 team. He mentioned that before. I don't know if you met that goal or not, but take us to that and beyond, and your experience with the Paralympics.
Yeah, so I ended up making my first national team in December of 2008. Remember it and hear my name called, and tears that come with that, and just going, okay, it's the first step, making that first national team. And then that next summer, I'm like on top of the world, moving to Phoenix, and ended up not making the travel squad that went to the major tournament that year. So that was kind of my first time being cut. We had 17 on the training squad, 12 went to the major tournament that year, and I didn't go. And And I'm kind of like, oh, I just moved my family, like my wife and I'm like across the country. Is this actually going to happen? And I'm like, all right, some people saying stick with it. I'm like, all right, I'm sticking with it. I'm gonna keep working out. I'm gonna keep it, and the coach, I'd asked the coach, I was like, hey, like, what did I do wrong or what happened? And he's like, oh, you gotta lose some more weight. And for me, I was like, one side of me is like, the devil, lose some more weight, bro. I lost like 50 pounds. I don't see you losing 50 pounds. Like, like you want to just go, but and then the side of me goes, all right. Like, you ask for feedback and sometimes you don't want to hear it. But you got to go to the mirror and go, okay, is that feedback real? What do I need to do? Do I need to lose some more weight? Yeah, I probably did. Do I need to get better at the game, get bigger, stronger, faster type of, yeah, I do. That whole thing. But, and then 2010 rolls around. I was cut from the team right at tryouts. I was one of the last ones cut for the tryout team. And here I'm like, okay, it's 2 years away. Like, this is a world championship team that they're selected. And normally like a world championship team, it's going to be close to the Paralympic team. I'm like, oh man, like, and there's so many people that are good in my class, like historically good in my class, and going like, dude, can I fit in? Can I do? And I think
class, our audience may not know what class means.
Yeah. Classification. So classification. So in rugby, it's 0.5 to 3.5 based on 0.5 increments, and it's all based on your physical ability. The most fully functioning players are 3.5s. The least functioning players are 0.5s. I'm a 2. And people in the 2.0 class were just fantastic at the time. There's a guy, Brian Kirkland, that was amazing all those years ago. And he ends up retiring before the season starts. And he's like, I'm done. I can't travel and play anymore. And everyone heard it. And then I get a phone call from coach. I'm like, oh, coach called me to put me on the team. He's got his mind back. He's going to put me on, and he's like, hey, coach, hey, he goes, this coach, and you want to try out again? And I was like, try out again? Like, what? How many times and I'm going, yeah, okay. And so it was a 3-player tryout for this team. And we go to this camp. Australia came in to play some friendlies. I played maybe 2 of the games, like 30 seconds in those games. And I'm kind of going, there's no way. But what I did in those 30 seconds was I did my job. I did what the coaches were asking me to do, some last second goal stuff that they were doing. That was, like in football, you have hands team or you have special teams. Like this is basically like last second goal, clock management situations, which got me a chance to show my value and worth to the coaches, and doing my job for that little bit of time ended up getting me on the team. So I was selected.
So it's not just showing up, it's showing up and doing your job.
Showing up and doing your job, and role recognition and understanding. And there's so many lessons in this, because I think a lot of times we're looking for that certain title. We're looking for that certain role within our business, or we're looking for that certain, respect level with whatever we're doing. Right. And I think a lot of times we forget that, it's, for me, it's that third W that I talked in the first day about words and work, and it's the walking piece. How are we doing it with integrity and character, no matter what your title is? Because people are going to see your actions in that. People are going to see what your words were and what your actions are and how you walk through that. And I think, for me, it was a moment that, I'll never forget, that led up to some other opportunities that ended up making the London team. And it was a beautiful deal. We ended up winning bronze there, which for a long time, that was the brown poopy medal. To me, it was like, oh man, the medal sucks. The wrong color. So,
wait a minute. You almost didn't even make a team.
Yeah.
And now you're competing in a bronze medal?
Well, to put it in perspective, from 2005 to 2012, USA had won everything. So 2006 World Championships, 08 Paralympics, 10 World Championships, which I was a part of. 12, we're going in, and it's like, this is ours. And I was like, if I make this team, I'm like guaranteed a gold medal, like, because we're just so good, you know, like, and we had a dream team. Like, I was one of the worst players on the team, and I thought I was pretty good. Like, it was like we had a good team, right? And we go in there and we're playing Canada in the gold medal, or in the semifinal game, to go to the gold medal game. And so obviously huge rival in any sport, USA, Canada, and wheelchair rugby is no different. And we go into that game and absolutely crap the bed. Like, it is just sponsored by Huggies. This whole game is, it's like, it's not good. And we're down by like 7 in the first quarter. In rugby, it's scored 1 point at a time. There's no 3-pointers to get you back in the game fast. So like, it was the worst first quarter. And from there, it's like, you know, a little microcosm of life. You know, are you going to fight to get back up? Are you going to fight through it? And we kind of fight through it, you know, keep going, get down. And I'm like, man, this is going to be like a Disney movie. This thing is awesome. Like Mighty Ducks theme music and the whole thing, right? And we get the fourth quarter and get another turnover and tie the game. And I'm like, I can hear the chariots of fire, and I'm like, this is going to be awesome. And we end up turning the ball over. Canada goes and scores, wins the game. Like the anti-Disney movie, like the way Disney movies probably should be, a little bit more Brian song, where it's a little bit more of a tearjerker at the end there, right? And 24 hours later, we had to go out and play for a bronze medal. And it was quick turnaround. And for a long time, I thought, man, you know, that bronze medal, you know, signifies failure. That bronze medal is the wrong color. And 13, I became a captain of the team. And, you know, the whole thing was me tunnel visioned on, I made the team and now I'm a leader. And like, we got to get back to being gold medal champions. And that in of itself isn't bad. Mm-hmm. But when we get focused on an outcome, and we get focused on, and we wrap it up in our identity, it can turn into something really, really bad. And for me, it really did. Like, and I led some good things. Like, I'm not trying to paint myself as a terrible leader or anything, but I got tunnel visioned on what validated me. And I thought gold medal was going to validate me, and that's it. I thought, if I get a gold, I'm going to be, people are going to want to hear me speak. If I get a gold, it's going to validate me as a husband and as a father and as a leader and as a player and like every aspect of my life. 2016 rolls around, and it's a weird story to tell, but there's a captain that I had with me that in 13 and 14, he became an assistant coach. We didn't see eye to eye. There was some like rumbling that he was going to try to get me off the team, and for whatever reason, you know, coaches probably say that, hey, we don't want to take you, but it's, you know, and so don't make the team. I was cut a month before going to Rio. And, you know, they go and win silver. And I was devastated. I mean, this is devastation on the level of my injury, where like, I'm just like, this is what I am. This is who I am. This is where I'm going to find all my validation. And now it's ripped away in a way that I didn't have any control over. I was so mad and so angry, because it was not like the path that I had expected. It was not my plan. And it just took me back to going like, God, why are you doing this? Like, what? And really wrestling with like, no, like, I feel so broken and this whole thing. And I had ended up, you know, back to the right people in your life and God putting people in your life. I'd ended up getting a master's in professional counseling, and I'd worked in private practice a little bit. This guy named Dr. Michael and Dr. Raymond Branton, they were the owners of this practice and that I worked for. And Dr. Michael had been in sports. He'd worked with the Diamondbacks, and great dude. And I'm in his office one day just pouting about what was going on. And And I was like, man, I feel so broken. I feel like this isn't fair. This isn't what I signed up for. This isn't gonna how it ends. And he's like, man, he started doing some like psycho stuff with me. There's some therapy, and he starts to ask me the Sunday school questions that I don't want to hear. He's like, so what is if you're broken, like, what would Christ do on the cross for you, man? I'm like, shut up, man. Like, I don't want to hear that, And he's like, well, what's God say about you? You're a child of God, right? Yes, Dr. Michael, just leave me alone. Like, he's just painting it up. But it really made me realize with that little Sunday school lesson that I had my identity wrapped up in rugby and so wrapped up in who I was as an athlete instead of whose I was as a child of God. Mm-hmm. And it really made me realize like I needed to reevaluate some things in my life and make sure that I'm building my relationships inside my own four walls with my wife and kids. And it wasn't something where it was like extremely fractured, but at the same time, it was like, whoa, I got to get some priorities realigned. It was out of focus. And you talk about one of your P's being perspectives. My perspective was completely wrong. Gold medals aren't a bad thing. But they're an outcome. And when we lead and we build a culture, we're building a culture for guys to win in life, not in a finite game where the scoreboard dictates a winner or a loser.
Can we talk about just for a moment?
Yeah.
The importance of embracing the process versus embracing the outcome. Most people are driven by outcomes. The
Yes.
bottom line, what did you accomplish?
Yes.
What tangible thing can you say you accomplished? Let's put it that way. But it sounds like there are so many other lessons and things that can be learned in the process. Why is it so difficult for us to embrace the process?
I think it's, especially as men, I think it's messy, man. Like there's a lot more layers to it than like, all right, did I win? All right, I'm a winner. Did I lose? All right, I'm a loser. Like it's simple, right? But the process, and it's messy, and there's a lot of different layers to it. But I think, when we're going in paralysis to purpose and staying on that theme, when we're going through the process of that paralysis to purpose, a lot of times we settle on our passion and kind of leave the purpose out of it. I think the beautiful intersect is the passion and purpose intersect, where you get your passion and your purpose. For me, it's like, man, I'm so passionate. My purpose is playing rugby. And it's like, no, it's not. My purpose is so much greater than just playing a sport. But I think we can get stuck in that at times. But yeah, the process too is like, there's a lot of failure there. There's going to be failure there, whether it's even on a small scale in practice or on a bigger scale as being cut from a Paralympic team or whatever it is learning from that, and the personal responsibility to choose to learn from that. Because there's a lot of people that want to play the blame game. There's a lot of people that want to say, you know what, like I could have said, hey, it's the coach's fault. It's that former captain turned coach's fault. It's the program's fault. It's this guy's fault. Like there's so many, like pow, pow, pow. Let's get the machine gun of blame out and just start firing away, right? But what happens there with the blame game in the process is you become stuck. There's a lot more people way more paralyzed than you and I, David, because they're stuck blaming people. And when you do that, you put the ownership on someone else and you become rigid and there's no way out of it. And then when you react to your circumstance and go, no, I've got a choice in this, that's where mobility happens. That's where your movement happens. And you become free to move on from something that you thought was keeping you from your destiny or from your purpose.
Wow. You said purpose was much bigger than the game of rugby. And I want to get to what you feel your purpose is now, but I want to go back and have you finish the story, because you got cut, you went and got some counseling, you had to refocus on what was really important. And how does that story end up?
Yeah, so I come back I'm wrestling. Do I stop? And I was like, nah, I don't want this to be my end. And come back and become a leader again in 2017, and was named best 2.0 in the world in 2018 at the World Championships. And for me, it was like, I want to come back and be a leader that invests in the people around me and not just focus on the win. Of course we want to win. Like my wife won't play checkers with me anymore. Like, it's just, I want to win. Let's not get that twisted. Right. And so it ended up, with going to the 2020 Paralympic Games and navigating, leading a team through COVID and ended up winning silver. And we lost in that gold medal game, but all the work I did about, my identity not being rooted in it, after the end of the game, I just felt a peace. Obviously we had lost and I was hurt, but at the same time felt a peace about, being victorious in what we did and what we set out to do during this quad. And, I have kind of a working title for a book that I'm working on called Permanent Victory. And I think, a lot of times we look at the fleeting victories and not the permanent victories. And
so now you're the head coach, which means now you have another chapter. You have another chapter in your book with rugby. And I know it's going to be successful, because how you define success, how you have defined success for us, has nothing to do with your wins or losses. That's why I know it's going to be successful for you.
Yeah.
This episode of Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, is sponsored by Fallon Upe, strategic advisor, investor, and best-selling author.
Here's a chance to win a signed copy of David's inspiring book, detailing his personal journey, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose. Each month, there will be 2 giveaways. Just leave us a review of today's podcast on the platform you're listening from. It's that easy.
Let's talk about your wife and your kids.
Yeah.
When you talk about your wife and kids, your smile is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's they come first and foremost. When people ask what I do, I say I'm a husband and father first. Those relationships in my own 4 walls. I have a friend that does some discipleship stuff and talks, his mantra is build the home. And I couldn't agree more. I think, especially as men and men of faith, we need to be in our homes first and foremost, with our wives. The best lessons we can teach our kids is showing them how we love our wives, and our actions with that, and then investing in them, investing in my 2 sons and my daughter, and what that looks like. And for me, when I was 19, and you talk about all the questions that are swirling around in your head, and you get the gift of looking back, and seeing the road that God's had you on. For me, it was all stemmed from a life verse in mine, Proverbs 3:5-6. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your paths. And I got that shirt a week before my accident, a shirt that had that verse on it. It was called I was wearing it a week before my accident. It was a Don Beebe House of Speed shirt. Yeah. I know you know Don Beebe. Yeah. And I had got that shirt in college. I forgot my shirt underneath my pads, was asking my teammates. One guy threw it was our kicker. The kicker was making fun of me. Like that's how you knew you're a freshman in college. Your kicker's making fun of you. And because I was like a cheeseburger away from being a tackle. So I was was making fun of me that I was slow. And they gave me this House of Speed shirt a week before my accident. I'm wearing it. It has that verse on it. And my camp counselor, I was working at basketball camp, and one of the camp counselors said, "Hey man, what's that verse?" He points that verse out. And I had opened my Bible since I'd been at college, probably, realistic, and saw that verse. I was like, wow, that's pretty neat, and that's neat. Yeah. And then, a week later, my accident happens. And when I'm in the hospital, I remember that verse, and my sisters had written it on my wall in the hospital room. And that verse for a long time was a battle, because I was like, I want to know what's going on. I don't want to just trust in you. I don't want to just not lean on I want to understand, as a 19-year-old male, I'm fighting. I'm like, no, I want to know. And I look back, and God's given me this theme of threes at 13 years old. I was at a district youth conference and a youth group and just felt that I was going to be a speaker someday. I had no idea why. And I'm like kind of pushing it out. I'm like, I'm from Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, population, nothing. Like I'm the only mixed dude in school. And like, I'm just like, no. And then, 19, I break my neck and I'm given this Proverbs 3 verse. And I'm like, I'm not going to be an athlete again. I don't understand all this thing, and lean out on your understanding. Okay. Just got to trust him through this. And I've been given this crazy, beautiful sport. I've trained for 3 Paralympics, with 3 letters across my chest, USA. I thought I was going to play college football at Division II level, traveling around on a bus. God said, I got bigger plans for you. I didn't know if I was going to be able to have kids. I got my mom in there joking about kids and the whole thing. And he's given me 3 beautiful babies to take care of and to cherish. At 33, I realized my purpose wasn't just rugby, playing rugby, coaching rugby. It was speaking. For me, speaking, my purpose in speaking is to plant seeds. There's a lot of times as speakers or as podcast hosts or as authors, we don't know the impact we make, but we're planting seeds. And I was speaking one time at at 33 is when I first started speaking full time. The theme of 3 is I didn't even realize it until I looked back on it all. And I go, wow, like God has given me a gift here and navigated me through these ups and downs that I never saw coming. I'll finish with this. I'm at Southwest Minnesota State speaking.
I know them well from wheelchair basketball.
Yeah. And like most people are just like nowhere, Marshall, Minnesota, and the southern plains of Minnesota. And I'm speaking at an FCA event there. And so for some athletes and like didn't get paid to go. It was a former coach of mine asked me to come. And I said, yeah, I'll drive over there. It's like 5 hours away. And at first I'm like, I don't know, like, I need to get paid, but I'll just go. And I'm done speaking and this guy comes up to me and some people, I'm sure you got it before, some, you're thinking like, all right, great. This guy's just going to tell me I'm inspirational. We'll go on with our day type of thing, and he goes, man, I got a vision for you, man. And I was like, what? And he goes, just laid it on my heart to tell you that, I had a vision about you being in heaven and God showing you this prairie of flowers and plants and different fruits. And he said, what he's showing you are all the seeds that you planted throughout your years of speaking. And it was one of the most beautiful things I'd heard. And I'm glad I went that day because I think to end is like, we never know what our impact is. I think sometimes we think we know what our impact is by our bank accounts or by how many, speeches we've done or books we've sold or whatever it is. But a lot of times our impact is unknown. And the real challenge is to remain disciplined and faithful to what God's purposed you to do. That's the real win. That's permanent victory.
That's the real win. That's permanent victory. That was what a way to end the podcast. And we're not even done yet. I resonate with so much that you say about having an impact. And I've been in a chair longer than you've been living. And I've had a chance to reflect and look back. Because sometimes we don't get a chance to see some of the impact, to see some of those flowers you were talking about. Yeah. See some of that. And you couldn't pay me enough for what that feeling is. Yeah, that's a whole different level of satisfaction and gratitude. Wow. So you talked about perspective here. You talked about perseverance. You talked about purpose. But I still want to ask you the question I like to ask a lot of our guests. Yeah. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word perspective?
First thing that comes to mind when I hear the word perspective, I think it's pause. I talked about that a little bit earlier, but I think, we don't get a chance to have a good perspective unless we pause or we're made to be paused. Yeah, made to pause. But when we turn around and look back about where we've came from, I think usually it gives us motivation to go, wow, we've actually came a long way. We're farther ahead than we thought we were, because I think perspective does that, gives you a jolt of energy to move forward.
That's great. Perseverance?
Perseverance, yeah. What comes to mind is just the ability and the drive to push through life's circumstances or obstacles, and do it with a joyful heart. Do it with that James heart of being joyful through your perseverance.
All right. And then partnerships.
Partnerships. You can't do it alone. You cannot do it alone. First thing that comes to mind is like anyone that tells me they're self-made, I'm like, I don't want to be around them.
I love it.
Because I think there's God-made and people-made. You need partnerships in this world.
Absolutely. I tell people that I'm a help-made man. I'll never be a self-made. Help me,
yes.
help me.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's awesome.
All the help I can get. I want to thank you also just for sharing your faith. And it's clear in talking to you that your relationship with God has anchored you and given you a solid foundation that you can always come back to, and it can always get you refocused. So thanks for sharing that. If our listeners would like to get a hold of you, to have you come speak, or whatever they would like to talk to you, I mean, you got a master's in psychology. I didn't know that. I should have called you during COVID when I was having some tough time. Man. But you were over there training for the Olympics, so whatever.
I was getting after it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, JoeDelagrave.com is my website. JDelagrave14 Instagram. If you're angry, you can hang out at Twitter at Joe Delagrave. The angry people and the coaches hang out there, I think, is what happens there. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, hey, this has been great.
Same, man. It's been great speaking with you. And
we talked before we got started, no script, no questions. Let's just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it was okay. So this is David Cooks reminding you, until next time on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
So Space Pod started in 2015, and it's always been a dream of mine since I was a young child, even around basketball. And some of my other goals is to help others go to outer space, because I want to experience outer space. So I went from having the end goal of wanting to help commercialize and help humans get to outer space, not so much go to Mars, right? But do the medium, right? Which is right in the middle, right?
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
I am so excited to have Jay Parker with us today. His journey is like none other.
Before you go to Mars, I'm sure you might want to get a couple people comfortable with going with outer space.
Right.
So, that company, that's sole purpose is all education and to develop this technology, which is going to help educate people where they're feeling a lot more confident about going into outer space.
Paralysis to purpose.